What I'm going to cover is some talk about what kind of prices are out in the marketplace. I admit my prices that I'll be sharing are just a little bit dated. They're just a few years old now, but just to get a sense of what's going on out in the stores and farmers markets, um, how to begin your pricing, like where do you begin, where you're going to set prices for individual cuts of meat, then talk about the approach that we use with the meat price calculator tool. So that's, like I said, it's sort of just one approach that's available. I'll do a demo of the meat price calculator, which is a free online tool, and anyone in the US, but anyone that's attending tonight can create an account on the meat price calculator for free, and then work on your pricing, save your results, come back and edit them in the future, and then I'll just kind of wrap it up. Yeah, I want to talk a bit about prices in the marketplace. And like I said, yeah, that some of these are from 2022 or 2021. Um, but the point is that there's this weird dynamic where consumers think of locally raised meats as being more expensive than grocery store meats. And I found this in a poll of 200 consumers way back in 2010. We ask questions about consumers' perceptions on locally raised meat. Do they buy it? If they don't, why don't they? And one of the reasons, the most frequently reason that they cited for not buying locally raised meat is they said, well, it's too expensive. And I suspect that what they were referring to was buying meat at the farmers market. Um, Also, in more recent years, we've seen that meat prices are were going up, and they're actually still going up. We're going to keep seeing probably beef prices going up. So, in addition to that consumer perception, we know that grocery store prices have been increasing sharply. So, knowing consumer perceptions and knowing what's going on out there, we ask the question, how do farm prices compare to grocery store prices after all? And I don't know if any of you are doing this, going to the stores and looking, but it's maybe surprising results. So what we did back in the summer of 21 was we observed the prices on a selection of meat cuts, beef, pork, and lamb in 7 Ithaca, New York grocery stores. I'm based in Ithaca, and that's what's convenient to me. So we went around and looked at all these different cuts of meat and their prices for a few months. At the same time, we observed prices at farmers markets and farm stores in New York, and those were observed all around New York State. So I'm not giving you an absolute perfect apples to apples comparison because it's just Ithaca grocery stores and then the rest of the state for farmers markets and farm stores. But we got prices from 17 different farms for this comparison. The cuts that we looked at, I tried to pick a selection, a sort of high value and low value cuts. So we looked at sirloin, ribeye, chuck roast, and ground beef for the beef, and then with pork loin, pork bone-in chops, and ground pork that's unseasoned ground pork, not sausages. And then for lamb, any lamb chop that was from the rib or loin section, not shoulder chops. And then, of course, ground lamb. To do a better comparison of meat prices, we did sort products based on any claims that were on the label about the production system. And then we classified them into 3 different groups. So, conventional meat product is going to be only found at the grocery store. Um, and it's going to be, is essentially any meat that doesn't have a label claim. And it does include those that say all natural, because all natural just means minimally processed. So it doesn't really refer to the production system. The level 1 meat, that refers to meat that's differentiated from conventional by what we're saying is like 1 degree. So this is meat, any meat that's sold from a farm store or farmer's market is automatically differentiated as being locally raised. That's why we don't have a conventional category for local meat. And then any product that said that it was raised without antibiotics or added hormones, we put into that level 1 of differentiation. And then level 2 was even further differentiated from conventional, where they were making claims about pasture raised, 100% grass fed, or certified organic. So just so you know, when we look at those prices, how we divided the meat up into categories so that we could make reasonable comparisons product to product. Here's an example of a Wegmans ribeye steak. There's no label claim, so it gets classified as conventional. Here's an example of a Wegmans certified organic, 100% grass fed. So this would get classified as level 2. And then another example from Wegmans, when we classified this also as level 2, raised without antibiotics, group housed, vegetarian fed. They're making a lot of label claims here. So there's actually, sorry, I misspoke. We classified this as level 1. Point is, it is differentiated by label claims. It would have had to been certified organic to get into level 2. Just to give you some examples of how we did it. So you just go to the store, you take a picture like this. We have the label in our picture, and we have the unit price in our picture, so we can go back and enter all that into Excel. And this is the result. Again, it's from the summer of 21, so we're due to repeat this exercise. But um, here's what we found. So the consumer says, "Hey, I don't buy locally raised meat because it's too expensive." And yet, when you go out there and look at prices, you find that on average, farm prices for beef are lower than grocery store prices. And we just look at that top line with the chuck roasts. So, grocery store conventional chuck roast, n equals 13 means we found 13 different chuck roast products, and their price ranged from 5.99 to 8.69, and the average price was 7.17. Hop over to the level 1 farm prices column, and you see that the farm average price was 6.43, so it's lower than the grocery store price. And in fact, the grocery store's level 1, so their differentiated product, was 11.49, so a lot higher than the farm's price. And if you follow this over to level 2, looking at the chuck roast still, you actually find that uh, the farm price for beef chuck roast that was described as certified organic or 100% grass fed, the average price was 6.85, so still lower than the grocery store conventional price at 7.17. So, we found this consistently with beef, that farmers market and farm store prices were tended to be lower than grocery store prices. So it's an interesting conversation to have, because the consumer says, "Hey, I don't buy your stuff; it's too expensive." But then they go to the grocery store and buy more expensive stuff, right? Um, but I do think that the opportunity here, instead of trying to say, "Hey, local meat is cheaper," the real opportunity is for us to do a price correction, because my estimation is that these prices set by the farms are actually too low and not necessarily delivering profits. Also, want to point out, because I think it's kind of interesting, that the grocery store prices for the level 2 product, the the certified organic or 100% grass-fed product, tended to be lower on beef than the level 1, which would be a grain finished, no antibiotics, no added hormones. And we think the reason for that is that level 1 product tends to come from U.S. farms. In fact, it here in the Northeast, it tends to come from farms in the Northeast, like New York and Pennsylvania. And so the grocery store's cost structure to get that beef is higher. To buy it, to process it, and to distribute it is higher than their grass-fed products, which tend to be from South America. And for whatever reason, they're able to buy that in at a much lower price. So yeah, that's what we think is going on there with the beef. Here's pork and lamb, and we've tended to find the same results, although um, lamb producers were pretty strong on their pricing, and they tended to be a little bit higher than the grocery stores, which is a good thing for lamb producers to be priced higher. And pork producers, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. If you want to know all these results, I'll tell you where to find them online, so you don't have to worry about trying to screenshot this or try to read it all at once. Just want to get across the idea that um, that grocery store prices are high currently, and that farm prices, as they stand now, are pretty competitive. But I think that that's an opportunity for us to do some price corrections. When we think about the price situation that's going on out there, um, consumers are paying high prices. What we just saw on that chart was that the highest prices were at the grocery store. So I wrote a little essay called "The Pricing Pep Talk," and I'll tell you where you can find that too. But the point of it was, if you're feeling nervous about raising prices, be encouraged to know that consumers are already paying high prices when they buy from these grocery store sources, and that local meat consumers, people who are seeking out farms to buy their meat, are motivated primarily by supporting agriculture and by buying a differentiated product, and so their willingness to pay is higher than shoppers who are just price motivated shoppers, and local food shoppers. There's a little bit of a difference there. Also be encouraged about raising prices, knowing that if your price increases happen to result in selling fewer units, let's say in a period of time like a month, it doesn't automatically mean that you'll be earning less money. So the concept of the consumer's response to price increases is called price elasticity, and it's something that we're studying. Our research team is studying now. But it's just the idea that as prices go up, depending on the product, consumers may buy a little bit less, or they might not stop. They might just continue buying at the same pace. And so we don't know exactly what to expect necessarily, but when we raise our prices, but do know that if it does result in selling fewer units, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily bringing home less money in that time period. So it doesn't necessarily harm cash flow. And I made this little chart to give you an example. So if we're normally selling ground beef at 6.29 a pound, and we typically sell 80 pounds in a month, then we're grossing $503. If we raise our, excuse me, if we raise our ground beef price up to 7.85, which by the way is the grocery store average price, so we just bring our farm price up to match the grocery store, we could have some customers decide, instead of buying 2 pounds, to just buy one, or maybe some customers that don't buy ground beef at all. We could lose about 16 customers, and we'd still be grossing essentially the same amount of money. And then if we were to not lose anyone, of course, we're going to make more money. So don't worry that price changes could um, are necessarily going to lead to lower sales, because your gross sales could remain, and that's something you're gonna have to study, price sensitivity as you experience it. All right, so where to begin the talk on pricing? I think, as university ag economists, you might think that we are going to tell you, what it's supposed to be, what your goals should be, and instead, I'm just saying, let's start the pricing discussion by identifying for your operation what your financial goals are, and just really laying out what you want to get from the farm, and then take it from there. So, this is just a hypothetical example where you might say, look, I need the farm to, let's say I need it to gross $100,000 a year. Um, we're going to split that 100,000 up across our different enterprises. Maybe we've got hay and beef and pork. In my example, we just have beef and pork. And then we're going to think about, well, how many head do we expect to market in this year? And simply divide. So, we're going to split up that 100,000 between beef and pork as a 70 and 30,000 split. And then we're going to say, look, we expect to market 26 beef. Therefore, our financial goal for the farm is to gross 2,692 per head. That's where I'd begin the pricing discussion. I'd then come back and refine it through time, but it's a good way just to say, like, how much money do we even want to make off one head when we sell it? So we're asking ourselves, how much do we wish to make in gross sales? We're going to figure out how much do we expect to retain as profit, and then come up with a profit per head or a gross per head as a target, and work towards that target. When we begin that work, we're going to think about all the different ways, all the different channels that we could sell. And we're going to think, depending on where that number per head ends, which market channels might make sense for us. Not all channels can necessarily deliver that kind of gross sales, but what I've done here is just line the channels up based on the amount of processing and the amount of marketing effort that we have to do. So down here at the bottom in red, I have channels where we can sell animals by the carcass. We're going to be paid by the carcass weight, and we don't have to arrange for the processor. So whether we're selling into commodity channels, regional brands, or co-op brands, they arrange for the processing. Our marketing effort is really coordinating with them and shipping off trailer loads of animals, getting a check in the mail. And, it tends to be on the lower end of pricing. right? So in those channels, we're going to receive a lower price per pound hanging weight. HCW is hot carcass weight or hanging weight. As we move up into the purple channels, we're looking at ones where we're still going to get paid by the carcass, but now we're responsible for arranging the processing with the processor. So freezer trade is the sale of quarters, halves, and wholes direct to consumer. Um, I'm a big fan of freezer trade. I think it's really efficient for the producer. It's a great deal for the consumer, and it just works really well. Um, it could be done with custom exempt processors and so on. And then we also have maybe retailers like butcher shops and grocery stores or restaurants that want to buy in sides, let's say. So that's another whole carcass channel where we're going to arrange for the processing and then deliver to them. And then finally, at the top in blue, we have those channels where we're selling meat by the cut. And I'm going to focus on meat by the cut tonight because that's the more difficult pricing example. But here we're going to be arranging for the processing and then also managing inventory. And so we have channels like selling at farmers markets, selling at our own farm stores, and also wholesaling to restaurants and retailers, but in this case by the cut, not by the carcass. So as we move up through these channels, where we're going to be expecting to receive higher and higher prices per pound of hanging weight, and we could kind of calculate out what that would be. I just want to point out that high and low prices are not necessarily making channels good or bad, because what comes with those prices is the need to invest marketing time and marketing dollars. So I'm going to call that marketing effort. And yeah, up here in the highest price channels, it's also the greatest amount of marketing effort. Think time is probably going to be your largest marketing cost, especially with something like farmers markets, but you've also got promotions and advertising and other kinds of marketing expenses, market fees, and so on. So yeah, as we look at all these different channel options, think of that, just because prices are higher, or to put it another way, in order to receive higher and higher prices, we're going to need to invest more and more time into marketing. So I don't call any of these channels good or bad. They're just different levels. I think that the pricing challenge is that each of these channels comes with a different cost. And that's what I just talked about. That cost might be primarily your time, but each of these channels that we reviewed comes with a different cost. Each cut on a carcass comes in a given proportion, or the yield. And, magically, each cut has a level of demand among consumers. And I would say of consumers in that channel, it's channel specific. So, some restaurants might only want to buy steaks, right? And other restaurants might be interested just in getting a lot of ground or getting briskets, right, for barbecue or something like that. So when we're working on pricing, the thing that becomes difficult is to think about our cost structure in each channel that we're using to sell, the yield of each cut that we're selling on a carcass, and then the level of consumer demand for those cuts in the channel that we're pricing. Again, that will vary from channel to channel. So all this yield and demand stuff starts to make pricing really challenging. I would propose that because conditions, we need to set a unique set of prices for each channel that we sell in. Let me just be clear, in as much as those channels are different. If you're doing two farmers markets in the same town, I'm not advocating for two price lists in that town. But if you're doing a farmers market in your hometown and you're also doing one that's 2 hours away, I am saying, okay, now you've got two different price lists because of the costs. Um, I was actually giving this talk in Pennsylvania a number of years ago, and there was a couple. I was doing it in person at Penn State, and there was a couple there, and they said, "Hey, Matt, we're doing that scenario that you just said. We're selling at a farmer's market in our hometown, and then we're selling at a farmer's market 2 hours away in Pittsburgh." And they said, "Won't our Pittsburgh customers be mad if they find out we're using lower prices in our hometown farmers market?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. You just tell those people that they are welcome to drive 4 hours round trip to save money on beef, right? You can see that they're not going to have a problem with two price lists because of that different cost structure that you're experiencing. So don't be worried about that part. All right, I'm saying we need different prices for each channel, and then I'm asking the question, Why would we expect different levels of profit in different channels? I'm advocating for different prices in different channels, but I often hear people say, oh, we're really profitable when we sell in this channel, but we're not profitable when we sell on that channel. And my question is, well, why would you expect different levels of profit? Because that's within your control when you develop pricing. So we can create a scenario where the profit per head, our farm financial goal, is fixed across all channels, and the real variable cost across channels becomes our cost of marketing. So let me walk you through a hypothetical example. These are not real numbers, so don't jot them down. Um, but if we're raising, a pen of animals, and we're going to be selling them into different channels, our cost of production arguably is the same on all animals, regardless of where they're headed. And then we're going to say that, regardless of whether we're selling these at the farmer's market to a restaurant as wholesale cuts or to customers for quarters, we're going to use just one processor. So with carcass weights being, really close in range, then we're going to say, okay, our processing cost is the same across all channels. Now we plug in that farm financial goal or our desired profit per head, and we're going to keep that the same across all animals and all channels. And therefore, all we need to plug in now is our marketing labor costs. And that's where we see a big difference. It takes us a lot more time, let's say, to sell all the meat from one animal at the farmer's market. So we're going to say, hey, our marketing cost, the value of our time, and our other costs is $960 an animal when we sell at the farmer's market. Therefore, we need to gross more in order to reach our farm financial goals, and that's reflected in our price list. When we sell wholesale to the restaurant, it's going to take us a lot less time. We have a minimum order size. We do deliveries that only take us, an hour or 2 hours. So our labor is a lot lower. Therefore, we can offer our wholesale price, if you will, based on our reduced cost in that channel, and we'll gross less per head, but we're still keeping our $300 per head fixed. And that reminds me, people often ask me, "Hey, what percent discount do you have to give from your retail price in order to do wholesale?" And to me, it's like there's no magic like 30% or 20%. It's more like this: look at your cost structure when you sell into a wholesale channel and develop a unique price list based on that. Don't base your wholesale price on discount below retail price. And then finally, we had the freezer trade where we're selling, and we only have 4 customers. Let's say a few of them are repeat customers. They're used to dealing with us. They don't have too many questions. Our marketing cost in that channel might be a lot lower. And that's why we can gross less and still receive our profit per head. All right, so the meat price calculator is a tool that we developed back in, I don't know, 2014. Yeah, I guess it's been about 10 years. And it's designed so that you can calculate prices for meat by the cut or by the carcass. And like I said, doing it by the carcass is pretty easy and straightforward. So I'm not going to walk through an example of that tonight, but I'm going to focus on pricing by the cut. In order to use the meat price calculator successfully, you do need to have some data from your farm. And there's a sheet on the meat price calculator website that outlines everything you need to gather. But the things that are most important are an estimate of your cost of production, however you want to estimate that. And then you're going to pick one animal, one carcass, and have the weights for all the different cuts that you'll sell from that carcass. So you'll have a carcass weight and then the yields, because it'll ask you to plug all that in, and I'll show that to you. But my point is, if you see this webinar tonight, chances are you're not going to be able to sit down and use the price calculator when this talk is done. Chances are you're going to need to gather that data first and then sit down and have a successful use. The way that meat price calculator works is to think about all the costs associated with an animal and gather them all together. So I've tried to do them where they look like the primals on a carcass, but I realize the font is probably really small. But what I'm adding up here, all these costs are my cost of production, just a break even cost of production, and then my production profit, because I have a production enterprise on my farm and a marketing enterprise, and I want the production enterprise to be profitable. So I'm going to look at my flat cost of production, and then I'm going to add to that a production profit for that operation. I've got my trucking costs because they're easy to keep track of. This is driving the animal to the processor and then perhaps driving back to the processor to pick up the meat, maybe for deliveries as well. I've got my processing costs. This is the easiest record keeping because your processor gives it to you on the invoice. So yeah, it's done. You know those costs. The cost of marketing could be a little bit challenging, but estimating the amount of time and money that you spend on marketing for any given channel, gather that cost too, and then your marketing profit. So there's the cost of your time when you're marketing in a channel, but then there's the idea that you're going to profit above that cost. And that's sort of the justification for participating in the channel. So these are all dollars, and we just collect all of these dollars together into one lump sum. And now all we have to do is take those dollars and divide them out across the different cuts. And that's how we work on pricing. How do we decide how to spread those dollars across the different cuts? Well, it comes back to the yield on the carcass, which you'll weigh all those cuts out from one typical carcass and you'll have those yields. And then consumer demand. Some cuts come in a very large yield. I mean, I'm going to kind of pick on beef chuck and beef round. These are large portions of the carcass, but with relatively low consumer demand. So that's why we often turn it into ground beef. Other cuts tend to be really high demand and come in low yields, like ribeye steaks or bacon if you're a pork producer. We always chuckle at the stories about first time uh, bulk buyers, buying a quarter of a cow and saying, "Can you just cut mine all into ribeyes?" Right? Or buying a half a pig and saying, "Just cut my whole pig into bacon." That's not how it works, right? So we've got this whole yield and demand thing, but that's how we decide how to divide all those dollars out across the cuts, and that's really the pricing game. Uh, I'm going to hop on the meat price calculator in a moment and do a demonstration. Um, and I just wanted to walk through some of the numbers that I'm going to use. They're um, they're hypothetical numbers. So don't use them for yourself. But just to walk you through so that when I log in, you'll see they're already filled in. The first question that the price calculator is going to ask, well, it's going to ask what marketing channel and what species are you pricing for? Right, so we're going to do an example of selling beef at the farmers market. And the next question is going to be, what's your break even cost of production? So when I do my example, I'm going to fill in that it's $1,300 per head as my break even. And then how much profit would I like my production business to make on one head? And I'm just going to fill in $100. So again, the break even just gets me as a break even farm, right? But the profit takes me above, so I have money to to withdraw as an owner or to invest for the future. Then it's going to ask us to enter processing costs. I'll show you those when we get there. And then it's going to ask about marketing time. So when we want to estimate our marketing cost for a marketing channel, we're going to think about how much time would it take me in that channel to sell all the meat from one animal. So I'm going to estimate that for beef, it's going to take me 40 hours at the farmer's market. And I actually break that down here on the next slide. I'm saying it's going to take me 5 farmers markets at 8 hours each. I'm including packing the truck up, driving there, selling, tearing down, driving back, unloading the coolers into the freezer. So I'm going to say 5 farmers markets at 8 hours each. Value my time at $15 an hour. It's taking me $600 worth of marketing effort in order to sell all the meat from one animal at farmers market, and that means that I'm selling about 80 pounds per market. In addition to paying myself for that time, I also want to make money. I want to be profitable. Like, why are you going to the farmer's market? It's to beat the opportunities from other market channels, right? It's to have a greater level of profit. So here I'm going to fill in that my profit per head, my target profit per head is $500. So again, I'm paying for all that marketing time I spend in this channel, and then I'm also profiting, for my personal life. All right, when you go to well, I think I'll probably just jump right over there and go to the price calculator. It's going to be at meatsuite.com/calculator. This is Meat Suite, and that's something that we use in New York. But what you're going to want to do is go to the For Farmers tab. And when you get here, you'll see the Cornell Meat Price Calculator. So again, anyone is welcome to come onto the price calculator and create an account. All right, so you can create an account, and I suggest that because you can save your data and return to edit it. You can also just come on here and use the calculator without creating an account. It'll give you the results, but then it will forget you. So you won't be able to come back. Let's say your feed costs go up and you want to adjust your cost of production. You won't be able to do that if you don't create an account. But I have an account, and I want to orient you to some of the other things that are on the price calculator website before I go to my dashboard and work on pricing. We have the Get Prepared tab, and if you expand that, it tells you this gather your data document tells you all the data points that you need to gather in order to use the tool. Um, there's a meat cuts and weight sheet. If you want to bring a carcass back from the processor, and you just want to record the weights of all the cuts, then you can just use this sheet. You could also make your own. The pricing pep talk is an essay that I wrote, and it includes those tables of all the grocery store and farmers market prices that I was sharing. So if you want to see those up close again, you can just grab the pricing pep talk. And then finally, there's a series of videos, just like the one I'm doing now, that walk you through how to use the price calculator. So if you need another tutorial, you can return to the recording of tonight's webinar, or you can always come here. But now I'm going to go to my price list. So if you have an account, then you're going to have a dashboard and all your price lists. Each price list tells you when you last updated it, which is a nice thing to see. And then it tells you what that price list is for. So this October 23 beef price list is for farmers markets selling beef by the cut. And I have some down here that I haven't worked on. So I'm going to go into this price list. You can name your price list and start editing. So when you get into creating a price list, you'll see these 4 tabs here: your costs, your prices, the results, and then the chance to revise your pricing. We're going to first work our way across the your costs tab. And there's 3 of those: production, processing, and marketing. Just like I reviewed in my slides, I'm going to fill in my cost of production, and then I'm going to work on my profit per head and go to the next step, which will be processing. So what we ask you to do, because we're really thinking about working on a one head example, is pick a really typical or average animal. If you're already keeping a lot of detailed records on carcass yields by the cut, then you could take an average from your data set. Let's say you have 8 or 10 head in there. Pull an average, treat that average number as one typical animal. But if you don't have those kinds of records, pick a typical animal and take it to the processor when the time comes, and then bring it back. You'll have your processor invoice with the carcass weight on it and your processing costs, and you'll also then weigh out all those individual cuts and keep a log of those because you'll need them in some of the next steps. So I'm going to say here that I paid a slaughter fee or a kill fee at the processor of $85 per head. I paid a cut and wrap of 85 cents per pound of hanging weight or carcass weight. Also drove that animal to the processor, figured that cost me $35. And we do have a little breakout calculator that can help you with the trucking costs. And then also I'm going to drive back and pick that meat up. So I had another $35 for that second trip. Now I can go to the next step. And we have our marketing costs. And like I showed you in the slides, I'm going to estimate that it takes me $600 worth of my time. But you could add other marketing costs in here. So if you're paying for advertising, if you're paying market fees, if you're paying for credit card processing, or I guess I'd include that in the payments, but any other marketing costs that you want to add, this is your opportunity to add them in here. It tends to be that marketing labor is the largest and the one that is, people are really thinking about. But you can add other marketing costs per head in this section, and then your marketing profit. And like I say, this is the justification of why you're participating in this channel, is you're trying to beat other opportunities and really have a strong profit per head. So once we've entered those, we can go to the next step, which is the Your Prices tab up here. What you'll have to do on this page is enter every cut that you get from a carcass that you sell and the weight that you got from that one ideal carcass, or that one typical carcass. In my case, it was a 605 hanging weight. So now I'm going to enter all of the cuts and how many pounds I received. So these are my yields. And then if you're already selling in that channel, you're gonna enter your current pricing, where it says original price. So let's say I'm already selling at this farmer's market, and this is my price list. So I'm gonna enter all those. You just come down here, you type the name of a cut, right? Like so I'm gonna say beef sausage, and then I'm gonna say I have 22 pounds of it, and I'm gonna enter my current price that I'm using, $9 a pound or whatever. If you are paying for additional processing, like to have hot dogs made or patties or sausages, and those additional charges only apply to those pounds, you do have the chance to enter that here. So let's say I'm paying 35 cents a pound to create sausage, and it's just charged against those 22 pounds. There is a chance to add that extra processing cost in here. With that said, I'm not going to add this cut. I'm going to go back to my scripted example, but that's how we would add more cuts. All right, when we got all the cuts and pounds and prices entered, we can go to the next step. Let me quickly add, if you're developing a price sheet for the first time, then you could enter your prices as all just $1 a pound, right? Of course, it's going to tell you that your prices are too low, but just get that to get through this page. Now we go to the results page. All right, so what the calculator tool is going to tell you is, hey, you're not meeting your goals using this price list based on these yields, based on your cost structure. You're not meeting your financial goals. And remember, I said my target profit per head for participating in this channel was $500. What this is really telling me is that my price structure now does not give me that $500. So it's not necessarily that I'm losing money with these prices, right? Because the value of my time, I wasn't writing myself checks, but I'm not meeting my goals. And that's what's important in this price setting example, is to meet your farm financial goals. So it also gives you some other metrics. If you were to meet your goals, then when all the cuts were sold, you would have grossed $3,169. Your current price list is only delivering $2,630 when everything is sold, and that's why you're coming up short by 538. It's telling you that the weighted average price across all cuts that you should be getting is 814, but your current weighted average price is 675. So of course you're going to need to bring that average up. And it's also telling you that your carcass to retail yield was 64%, which is good on a beef animal. So we're just sharing that with you. And yeah, you can review all the numbers that you've entered so far if you want to. But mostly, we want to get onto the next tab and revise our prices. And I always think of, like, these first three tabs, they were like the homework that we had to do. But the next tab is like the video game where we get to play, pricing. All right, so on the revised prices page, it's reminding us of our results up here. And we can scroll up and down our list of cuts and start changing our prices. You can see that it's going to tell us how many pounds that we have. So that's our yield. It's also going to tell us what our original price is, as a reminder. And now we can start adjusting prices and try to chip away at this loss. So I'm going to start at the bottom, actually. I'm going to look at my ribeye steaks. I was selling them for $14 a pound. But maybe I went to the grocery store and saw that they're charging a lot more than that. So I raised my price to 19. As I did that, it kept up with me. So now my loss there in the top right corner is down to 423. And I'm going to keep going until I get that remedied. I have my fillets at 15, so I'm going to raise them up to $25. Now, this is why we're showing you the yield, and this is why you have to be thinking about consumer demand in this channel along with carcass yield. When it comes to filet, we only have 6.5 pounds. So even though we jacked the price by $10 a pound from the original, it doesn't have a huge impact on our bottom line because that $10 a pound is only applying to 6.5 pounds. So as you adjust prices, you're thinking about consumer demand and carcass yield. I'm going to raise my short ribs up to 650 and my brisket to $8. All right, and my sirloin steaks up to 11. All right, so I've really been chipping away at my loss, but now I've got 188 pounds of ground beef, right? So of course, changing the ground beef price is going to have a big impact on the bottom line because there's so many pounds that are affected by that price change. And so as we went through and we adjusted our prices, we see that, now we're in the green. In other words, now you're reaching your farm financials goal, your farm financial goal. You're actually exceeding it by $7 a head. I wouldn't get too excited. It's only $7. You don't have to dial this into an exact zero. You just know that, you have the comfort of knowing that based on all the numbers that you've entered so far, you are reaching your goal. And I would say just because it turned green doesn't mean that you should, click the done button. You should look around here and think about the pace of sales for different cuts. In other words, what are the cuts that you sell out of very quickly in your farm store or at your farmer's market? And is there an opportunity to raise prices on those cuts in order to sort of slow down consumer demand, right? Everybody loves to come and buy our ribeye steaks, and then we're sold out so quickly. So maybe we raise prices even higher on ribeyes in order to adjust the rate at which they sell or to slow them down. And then when customers come in looking for steaks, we say, hey, if you think the ribeyes are pricey, why don't you look at these sirloin steaks, or why don't you look at these Denver steaks, right? Other things. So we're not going to lose a customer over that higher price necessarily. We're going to use it as an opportunity to manage inventory and direct them to other cuts that they could buy where they're kind of solving our inventory management problem. So as you work around this page, think about things that sell very quickly, and maybe you build up enough of a buffer. You can even think about discounting some things that sell very slowly. But ultimately, you get it dialed into the green. You can save and complete the list. You can export it as a PDF. You can print it, and it'll be on your dashboard. So if you come back in you come back 3 months from now and you see that your feed costs, your feed bills have gone up, and you want to adjust your cost of production to reflect that new feed cost, then you're going to have to go back over and adjust your prices to keep up with it. So it's a good thing to sort of keep that price list there and come back and revisit it. All right, so yeah, that's found at meatsuite.com. Like I said, you just go up to the For Farmers tab, where you can go to meatsuite.com/calculator if you want to go straight there. All right, so what does it mean if you develop a new set of prices like we just did? You get it all dialed into the green, and then you determine that your customers in that channel would, quote, never pay those prices, right? And I've kind of given this talk a few times where someone said, Matt, that was a nice talk, but my customers would never pay those kinds of prices. What does that mean? Or, that you might say, hey, I could never get those prices. It means a few things to me. One is that you might be in the wrong market channel. You might be at the wrong market. Um, let's think about restaurants, right? We could take our $9 a pound ground beef and go to the local McDonald's and ask them, if they want to start buying ground beef from us. They're gonna laugh in our face, right? They're not gonna buy it for $9 a pound. We could go to another restaurant in town that puts farm names on the menu and has white tablecloths, and they might be interested in buying that because they recognize the value. So some of that consumer reaction could be that you've misidentified your market channel. If you want to think about your target market and where they are and the ways that they sell and the channels that they use, it might be time to do some re-examining. Another thing to think about is, if you say I could never get those prices, is your level of marketing effort. And I showed that early on. In order to receive high prices, in order to support, let's say, high prices, it's important to support those prices with strong marketing effort. And that includes, identifying your target customer and serving them well and being in the places that they shop. So you really support prices with marketing effort. Consumers don't buy local meat. They're not primarily motivated by price. They're primarily motivated by other characteristics of the product. And so you need to figure out who those customers are, to take the time to understand their preferences and their shopping habits and how they want to receive the product, and really design something to serve them well. Focus all your marketing decisions and your marketing activities and your communication based on your target customer, and really identifying people who value what you produce so that you can sell it to them. To successfully use the meat price calculator, you would need to prepare in advance. Even when I do my demos, I have all my data recorded on a sheet so that when I sit down in front of the computer, I have my carcass weight, I have my cost of production, and I have the yields and weights from all those different cuts. So you will need to prepare in advance, gather all that data, and then set aside time to work with it. Um, what I'd suggest is not just dropping in on it without any data and testing it out, because it's not a satisfying experience. Decide on your production cost and your production profit per head. Estimate your marketing time. You can always improve estimates, at least get something started and then revisit them through time, and you can always improve your systems. Decide on your marketing profit per head, and then get that one typical animal or average animal uh, data set, which is the carcass weight and the cut yields. You can weigh out all those cuts on your kitchen counter. I've done it many times for many species at different farms around the area, and it's not that hard. Doesn't take that long, so you could just weigh it all out. Or some processors can actually give you a list of the cuts and all their weights. Have your processing invoice around and estimate your trucking. We do, I didn't click on it, but we do have a little trucking estimator tool inside the meat price calculator that can help you with that. And then have your list of current prices. If you're revisiting your current price list to see if it needs to be tuned up, then have your current prices. If you're creating a set of prices for the very first time, then you don't need that piece. Anyone who's on this webinar, or who's run into PA FarmLink, is welcome to go on and create a free account on the price calculator. You just visit that page that I showed you and choose the create account button, fill in the form, ask a few questions about your city, your state, your farm name, your email, and then you'll get approved for your account and you can start working on price lists. And before I close, I'm going to share my email on the next slide in case questions occur to you after the fact. You'd be welcome to shoot me questions about meat pricing. But I actually want to jump back here for just a quick moment and talk about this supporting your prices with marketing effort again. Um, we've probably all been to a feeder sale or a livestock sale, and so I'm going to think about going to a feeder calf sale at a sale barn. You know, as different lots of calves come out, the buyers are evaluating those calves, right? Looking at them, and then they're bidding. And pens of really good calves get higher bids, right? So we studied that. I did a 6-year study at Cornell where I went to feeder sale every week, and I recorded characteristics of each pen of calves and then the final price. And what we found is that buyers would prefer a black hide. They prefer about a 500-pound calf that's been vaccinated and weaned, and I mean truly vaccinated and weaned, not the day before and on the way there kind of vaccinations and weaning. Um, right? They preferred good body condition and muscling. So um, what I'm describing, I think we've all observed, and then those calves, those pens get higher bids. What we're seeing in action at an auction like that is that when we design a product to satisfy our target consumer, their willingness to pay increases, right? So when the buyers see calves that they like, that have the characteristics that they're seeking, their willingness to pay increases. And the same goes for that consumer that we're trying to sell locally raised meat to. When we take the time to understand what they're looking for, um, and sort of design that product, if you will, then we're going to be able to satisfy them, and their willingness to pay will go higher. So that's part of what I'm talking about when I say support your prices with marketing effort. Take time to think about who that consumer is and what they're seeking, and then you can satisfy them, just like you've seen play out in the sale barn. Yeah, I just finally wanted to offer my email address. So, if you do have questions as you work through the price calculator, or, questions occur to you later about pricing, you're welcome to email me. I'm responsive. It might take me a day or two, but happy to, have that discussion So please, feel free to reach out and contact me.